Hey everybody, Mike here. So NOCO just recently came out with a new product and they sent this thing out to me to try out and test, and in return I'm going to give them a review and we're going to put this thing to the test and see if it actually holds up to the claims that are made on this. So this is the new tire inflator they just came out with, and they came out with this in 3 different models. There's an Air 10, an Air 15, and an Air 20. And essentially each model is able to step up from how much PSI it's capable of producing and what size tire it's rated for. So if you get the Air 10 model, it's rated for around a 31-inch tire and around 80 PSI. When you step up to an Air 15, it goes to a 33-inch tire and around 90 PSI. And then when you get to the Air 20 model, like I've got here in front of me, this is rated for up to a 35-inch tire at 100 PSI. Which is perfect because I run a 35-inch tire on my truck. What I immediately thought was cool for this was I felt like I had a need for this product to keep on me in my truck at all times, because while I love these little brands like this that have these models that are battery powered and they do a great job for filling up basketballs, footballs, as well as car tires as long as they're a smaller vehicle, when you get into the 35-inch tires or even some of your factory half-ton truck tires, they're like a 265 on a 16, 17-inch wheel, it takes more than one full charge to get this little guy to air that tire up fully, especially if you're going from flat. While I think these little battery-powered air compressors are awesome when it comes to certain aspects, when you get in your heavier-duty trucks, I feel like you need something with a little bit more oomph, and that's where this thing came into play for me. So the first thing you'll notice here is this one has a power cord that hooks directly up to the battery. Now, if you get the Air 10 or Air 15 model, those actually have a 12-volt plug that will plug it into your cigarette lighter adapter on your dash. When you step into this Air 20 model, that's when they step this up and go ahead and get it to where you hook it straight to the battery. And that's mainly because a lot of your cigarette lighter adapters are only rated at a certain amperage. So if you've never used a NOCO product before, they always supply on all their products a real nice heavy-duty clamp when it comes to hooking to the battery leads. This one here has got a fuse in line as well, so that way you're protected in case this unit decides to pull too much amperage. You don't have to worry about it melting the wire. Now this unit here weighs about 10 pounds. It's got nice rubber isolated feet on the bottom here to keep this thing from shaking and moving around while it's sitting on the ground doing its job. On the top here, you've got a power button. You've got a couple buttons here for up and down to adjust your tire pressure. And then you've also got a built-in flashlight on the end here as well, which you may not think is much of a big deal, but I can tell you, if you're out there in the middle of the night, you don't have a flashlight on you, and you're trying to air a tire up on the side of the road in the dark, that flashlight's absolutely going to be handy to have to be able to see that valve stem or see exactly what you're doing. So don't sleep on that feature. That's a nice added bonus in my opinion. The nice thing about this dude here is he's got a nice long lead to hook up to your tire. Not to mention you've got a 20-foot cord here, so you should be able to reach all 4 tires no matter where your battery is mounted on your vehicle with no problem at all. Now on the bottom here as well, you do have a couple of adapters. So this is not just good for tires. You can also use this thing on your beach balls, volleyballs, air mattresses, you name it, because it does have a Presta fitting on here for some of your bike tires out there. It's got your needle for your basketballs and footballs, as well as another adapter here to be able to hook up to like a beach ball or an air mattress or so forth. So with that being said, I went ahead and sacrificed one of my tires on the truck. I let all the air out of that tire. I want to see how this thing actually does. I haven't used this yet, so me and you are going to learn for the first time together. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this video on time lapse real quick. And while this video is running for you here at the moment, I'm going to run a stopwatch at the same time. I want to see if this thing actually does air the tire up from 0 to 40 PSI as advertised, which they are stating can be done in 2.5 minutes. Now, if you're just trying to top the tire off from like say 35 to 40 PSI, you should be able to do that in less than 25 to 30 seconds. The other nice thing too is if this does in fact air up one tire in 2.5 minutes, and this thing has a duty cycle of 15 minutes that you can run this thing continuously, you should be able to air up all 4 tires with a 35-inch tire all in one duty cycle without having this thing take a rest. So let's go and get out to the truck. We'll get this thing hooked up to the tire and let's see what this thing's actually capable of. All right, so final thoughts on this thing. I went ahead and aired up 2 different tires. I wanted to see if the first tire was a fluke or not. So while it was advertised as being able to do a tire from basically flat to 40 PSI in about 2.5 minutes, my finding was it took me about 5.5 minutes to get my front tire aired back up. So I wanted to see if that was the case on one of my rear tires as well, just to see if there was something screwy going on. But even with that being said, I don't care if this thing would have taken 8 minutes. I am still extremely impressed with this thing. It's extremely quiet. So if you had to air a tire up at a campground in the middle of the night, while yes, it probably would wake some people up in the middle of the night, this is by far one of the quietest air compressors I've heard and tested of all the ones that I've tried. And I will say, after running this thing for the 5.5 minute time stretch like I did, I went up there and picked this thing straight up, and yes, it's still even a little bit hot down here at the bottom, but not too hot to the touch. Whereas some of these units that I've used like these, while I still stand by my opinion that I love these things, these will actually get extremely hot after running for about 10 minutes, actually to the point where you may actually need a glove to pick this thing up. And some do perform better than others, so I'm not knocking any particular brand. The heat sinks on this thing do a lot better job of keeping the heat off of it and keeping it cool, in my opinion. I also tested the light out while I was out there playing with this thing. Obviously, you've got to have this thing hooked up to the battery to be able to actually use any of the functions on this, but super easy setup. The light's bright enough to be able to see what you're doing. It does have a couple different brightnesses you can set it on, as well as a strobe light function on there as well. And I really like how this one just threads onto your valve stem, whereas some of them have the little lever that you got to rock over and lock in place. I much more prefer this design over some of the other designs I've seen out there. The only other thing to do is get this thing wrapped back up and get it stored in the nice little bag that it comes with. This thing will live under my back seat in the truck, and this will be the go-to on my pickup from here on out. And then I'll continue to carry these little units like this in all my other vehicles that don't have a big tire like my truck does. Hopefully that was somewhat helpful for you guys in figuring out whether this might be the right unit for you or not. While I was given this unit by NOCO to try out and test, I would absolutely buy this thing with my own money if I had to do it again. Super impressed with this unit so far. The only thing I can't speak to is longevity. Time will tell on that. I already own a few other NOCO products and have for years, and I've been nothing but impressed with this line and their brand and what they stand for. That's all I've got for you on this one today, guys. I appreciate you taking the time to watch to the end here. We'll catch you guys on the next one.